Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision-making so that we can find out what keeps us stuck, but more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, consultant, author, and entrepreneur. With me today is my guest, Kari Petruch. Kari is a master relationship coach, strategic interventionist, bestselling author of Get Out of the Box and Into Play, The Secret to a Lasting Relationship, and the owner of Highest Intent Life Coaching. Over the course of her career, Kari has been helping couples to find joy and excitement, or to find more joy and excitement in their relationships using her amazing relationship reignition program. Kari is a mother of 3, a grandmother of 8, which I have a hard time believing looking at you. You do not look like a grandmother of 8. And she's married to the man of her dreams. Kari is a contributing author in the Wall Street Journal bestselling book, WTF to OMG. Kari, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Karen.
It is my pleasure. And I know that aside from your professional work, you have a personal story with divorce. And if it's okay, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit of your story with our audience, I think they'd get a lot out of it.
Well, yeah, where I begin, my personal story is that I came from an abusive childhood and then entered into a marriage at 19 years old. And boy, did I think I was grown up and ready for that. And I stayed in that relationship. It was very, very controlling and verbally abusive. And so I didn't know where else to go or what else to do. So I stayed there. My self-esteem was really low. My feeling of worthiness was at nothing. And after 27 years of all of that, I made a promise to myself that I would stay until my children were grown. And when my children were grown, I decided to walk out and go into the world on my own. I stepped into the world with a 0 credit score at 45. So if that tells you what kind of control was going on in my life, there's, who knows an adult that has not a bad credit score, but a 0 credit score. I didn't have a checking account, savings account, any credit cards of any kind. I walked out with a lot of cash that I had socked away for years to do that. And so my life has completely changed since I decided to take that step and walk out. It's just been unbelievable since then. And
I know.
that was in 2010. So
wow. That was a while ago. And I just, I want to stop you because there's so much about your story that's so important and so important for other people to hear. Number one, there are many kinds of abuse, right? That we all think of abuse as being someone is beating you to death, right? And that is horrible and that absolutely exists. However, there's financial abuse, which it sounds like you experienced a lot of. There's verbal abuse. There's emotional abuse. There's all kinds of abuse. And the pattern that you described is very, very typical, that over years of being beaten down, you had no self-esteem at all.
No, I really didn't. Well, I didn't have a lot to begin with when I entered into the relationship. I even thought, why is this great looking guy asking me out on a date way back when I was 16? So, wow. Yeah, I came into it vulnerable to that. I can look back on it now. I didn't realize that then, but yeah, I came in with absolutely no understanding of what I was getting into.
Yeah. And because of that, I mean, it all makes sense. Coming from an abusive childhood, of course, your self-esteem was low and you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're young, right? But now looking back, it's like, how did you, after starting with low self-esteem and then going through that many decades of abuse in various forms. How did you get the courage to get out?
I've had a lot of people ask me that question. And what's really funny is that I methodically planned. I saved the money for 10 years.
Wow.
I saved every little bit of money that I could get my hands on, every bit of cash that I could get my hands on, and I amassed $30,000
That's
of
amazing.
years so that I could walk away. And I'll tell you that one comment was made to me that just set me out the door. I just went, that's it, I'm done. And the one comment was, well, my friend said that my ex-husband said this to me. My friend said that if I divorce you, I'm just going to find somebody just like you. And I thought, no.
No, you're not.
That's it. I'm done. I don't know. It takes what it takes. I had already planned to do that. And on a wing and a prayer, I just took a really big, deep breath. And I have a really super strong faith in a power greater than me. And I just knew that I was going to be okay. I also had friends that are in an abuse shelter that rallied around me to help me, to direct me about what to do next. I'm lucky that I had a high school job, so I knew how to write a check, and I knew about a paycheck, and I knew I knew some of those things. So, and I had a bank that wouldn't take a chance on me. And then I had a second bank here in the town that I live in who took my cash and gave me a $500 credit card to begin with. And it was based on my story, and they took a chance on me. And I'm very, very grateful for that bank to this day. Now I get a great credit score.
That's awesome. But
Yeah.
what I really want people to hear when they listen to your story, which is an incredible story, is
Mhm.
that you had a plan, right? You
Mhm.
might not have had every last detail nailed down for sure,
Right.
but you had a plan in mind. And when you're going to get out of particularly an abusive
Mhm.
marriage, but even, when you're ending any relationship at all, having a plan for how you're going to move forward in the future is one of the most important things you can do. And the reason you were able to leave was because you had some money that you could probably use to find an apartment, to hire
Mhm.
a lawyer, to survive until you got a job and could make your own way in the world.
Yeah, that's true. I had a security blanket that I could set on my own. I want to say something though. That's
What?
really important to me. And that is if a woman is being beaten within an inch of her life, um, there are shelters everywhere to help you get out. And I'm not saying that what I went through is less, but it wasn't life. It wasn't my life in danger in that way. And I want every woman out there, if you are being hit in any way, shape, or form, you're being beaten in any way, shape, or form, there are thousands of women out there that will help you to get away and get back on your feet.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so critically important because you're right. I mean, yes, having a plan is super important. And I always counsel my clients, like, you've got to have a plan. And the fact that you had the wherewithal to start thinking about that and working the plan. You didn't just have a plan in your head somewhere, you were working it, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
when your physical safety or the physical safety of your children is at stake, that's a like non-negotiable, right? You get out.
Right.
But again, you
Yeah, and
still
I'm
need,
not saying that what I went through is not as bad or wasn't as traumatizing for me. But if my life was in danger, I promise you I would have walked. If my children's life was in danger, I would have walked in a heartbeat. But it wasn't. And
yeah.
it took me a longer period of time to realize exactly what was going on. So
Yeah. And thank God that you weren't in physical danger. But even for those who are in physical danger, maybe they can't do what you did. Maybe they can't squirrel away money here and there, but they still need to make a plan. And what they need to hear from you is
Mhm.
that there are women, domestic violence shelters, people, counselors, therapists, people all over who are there to help you make that plan of how you can get out safely.
Mhm. Oh,
Because
absolutely.
that first initial momentum that makes you leave, like in the beginning when everything is happening, that's a very, very dangerous time. And what you don't want to have happen is that you try to leave but you're not successful, because the repercussions from that can be huge. So making a plan for how to get out safely, how to get your kids out safely, super, super
Mhm.
important.
Well, it is. And any women's abuse shelter will help anyone with that plan. And they helped me too. It was I even had to ditch my cell phone and get a brand new number and a brand new cell phone. And and I couldn't even tell my grown children where I was for a while. They couldn't know that because I did not know what the consequences were going to be. I did not know what actions were going to happen. So I had to get safe and stay safe and listen to those wonderful therapists, counselors, other women who had survived abuse tell me, what I needed to do once I decided to take the step to step out.
Yeah. And thankfully, luckily, beautifully, your story has a really happy ending. And in that, you are now very happily married. Can you tell us about that?
Well, first, I went through therapy and got a lot of help. And of course, I won't tell you that there aren't echoes of but I married a man who recognizes those echoes and loves me and holds me and takes care of me very, very well. When I went to go and decide that I might like to have a serious relationship after that long-term marriage, um, I had great therapists who helped me to understand that I need to anyone that comes into my life needed to meet my values, needed to meet what I believed were true and honest qualities. You know, what was important to me? Integrity was super important to me. Faithfulness was important to me, and the list went on. So I learned to make that list of what I wanted. And I was told no crossing off.
I like that.
Right. And it's not that my husband and I haven't gone through our struggles. We have, but I didn't have to cross anything off. And he has just been an incredible love of my life. We've been married for 6 years, together for 7 years, and I wouldn't give him up for the world. I'm extremely happy. Um, he's that guy, anything that I need, he's there. um any problem we have to work out, he's right there to work it out. He's just absolutely an amazing
That is so beautiful, and such a beautiful message of hope for people who are stuck in marriages that
man.
maybe are abusive or maybe don't rise to the level of being abusive, but are just plain miserable, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the biggest fears that I know a lot of people have is that if I leave this, what if I don't find anyone else? What if I'm alone my whole life? How did you deal with that?
Well, the classic thing that I see as a coach is I see many times people who are in relationships that are not well, they're not healthy relationships, that they get out of that relationship and they go looking for someone else immediately. And instead of healing from that previous relationship and maybe making some changes in themselves, they jump into another one and then they don't understand why they're in the same relationship again.
Right. Different face, same relationship.
I did differently. I listened to my friends who said, don't do that.
Yeah.
Go get help and do that stuff. I actually listened, and I did have the feelings like I wanted to jump into another relationship because I thought that I couldn't survive on my own. I thought that without a man in my life, I wasn't worthy, and I had to get through that and get through therapy, get into what was real, which was I had to love me. And then I could love him.
Yeah. And that's such a beautiful and important message for everyone to hear, because when you boil it all down, that's all any of us is really looking for. We
Mhm.
want love, but it's when you're so desperate for that
Mm.
love because you feel, you're not complete without it, that you're not love itself.
Mhm.
That's when we tend to repeat old patterns over and over and over. And I know now you work with couples to keep them from doing that, to actually bring the joy back into their relationship or increase it if it's already there. Tell me about that. Tell me about the work that you're doing now.
I just love doing that. So what I do is I bring couples into their belief system. Like you have a belief system and your partner has a belief system. And many times couples get together and they don't talk about that. They're so excited to be together. They talk about, well, I like, these kinds of movies and I like and so often they actually get married without discussing their belief system. And belief system doesn't necessarily mean your religious or spiritual beliefs. It means, how were you raised? What did you believe to be true growing up? And then I bring them into an acceptance of one another and learning how to compromise on those different beliefs. And hey, maybe I can loosen up on this one, or no, I want to stick with that one. So I bring them down that path to do that. And then I teach them about a lot of it is about the need to be right.
Oh, that's a big one.
That I do a lot of work with couples. We as human beings, it isn't good, bad, we as human beings have this thing about needing to be right, and I teach them how to communicate with each other and lay down that ego and that need to be right so that they can have heartfelt understanding and feeling for each other.
Yeah.
So,
It's like I tell people all the time, you've got a choice. Which would you rather be, right or happy?
well, absolutely. I have a saying that I teach my couples, which is, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me right now?
That's
And
interesting. Tell me more about that.
that is a way to stop conflict and encourage couples to take a time out. Just because you're a grown person doesn't mean you don't need time out. If when my clients are feeling really super angry with each other, I explain to them that time out is time to think. Time out is time not to say hurtful words. Time out is time to say, does it need to be said? And by all means, if you get through all three of those sentences after having a timeout and a break from your argument and you really think you need to say that, then by all means say it. But most of the time, well, almost every time, the couples say to me that it works, and they don't say what they're going to say. Just 5 minutes, we
Yeah.
don't need hours and hours for a timeout. Just 5-minute break, just to think about those 3 sentences makes a difference.
That's so important and brilliant. But I want to dig in a little bit more to something you were saying about beliefs, right? Because how we all have beliefs. We all think we know how the world works, or at least how our world works, right? And the problem with beliefs is that they're so strongly ingrained in us, we assume that it's not a belief, it's just the way the world is, right? This is a fact, this is the way the world works, and people don't even stop to think about, well, no, this is the way I believe the world works, right? So how do you help people get down to where they see that what they assume is just the way everything is actually their belief about the way things are?
Well, a simple, easy way, I have a book, and the simple, easy way is I walk them through in the book. But when I am on one-on-one or couples client work, we walk through, and I give them the questions to question themselves. I walk them through and say, well, I understand that you believe this way. Tell me why it's important to you that you believe this way, and we walk through that, and that self-examination gets them, all my clients, thinking, why do I believe this?
But have you ever had anyone argue with you about, this isn't what I believe, this is the way the world works, this is the way things are?
Sure.
And how do you get them to even open the door a little bit to the possibility that this might just be a belief?
Usually the sentence that I use is, well, how is that working for you in your relationship?
Yeah,
that's again in the need to be right. This is the way I believe, this is the way the world works, this is the way it's all stuck in the need to be right, and I don't ask couples to turn their lives upside down. I ask them to change one thing at a time, eat that elephant one bite at a time. It's little tiny small steps. I don't imagine that I can completely change a person overnight from this to that, but I do enable them to make small changes and small steps, and that encourages them to make more small changes and more small steps. I don't keep clients for years and years and years. I usually bring them through a 12-week program, and then they're responsible for using the tools that I gave them to make those changes if they so desire.
And what kind of couples should come to you? Who can use your help and your services? It sounds like you're not a divorce coach, you're a relationship coach. So what kinds of relationships, marriages, what kind of people should come to you? And I guess that's one question that's sort of boiled in there is it do you work with any kind of people in relationship, or is it simply marriages? I mean, what if people are just living together? There's all flavors of relationships these days.
I am a master relationship coach, and I work with couples who are in serious relationships. I don't define what those relationships look like, what their partnerships look like. I have no boundaries about how, whether it's a partnership or it really doesn't matter to me. Married, unmarried, I don't care. I work with them if they're in a serious relationship and they want the relationship to continue. A lot of my work is with empty nesters.
Interesting.
Whose children have grown and gone, and they love each other. The love is there, but they both wake up and look at each other and say, who are you and what are you doing in my bed? So,
Interesting question.
right. So I helped them to reignite that love that brought them together in the first place. So love is still there. They are not interested in divorce, but they're trying to rekindle or reignite that thing that they forgot about. And I encourage younger couples to keep that love alive all the way along so that they don't get to empty nester syndrome and think that they're so far removed from their partner. But the empty nesters that come to me, it's amazing. I mean, the very first task they have is that every chance they have to hold hands again, and it's an incredible thing for them. It makes all the difference in the world for them. They're like, I never realized how important it was to hold hands. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty important. That touch thing is, you get the kids, money, job, all those things that got in the way. And then the kids grew up and left home and you're not connected to each other anymore. So you got to reconnect.
That's so interesting because so many people think that if the physicality of their relationship doesn't go way beyond just holding hands, it doesn't count, right? That holding hands is like, what is that? That's not important. That doesn't matter. And you're saying that it does.
It matters. It really, really matters. Holding hands is a form of intimacy that is reserved for courting usually and is forgotten about in a relationship. And when a couple needs to reignite, they need to begin to court again and never stop courting, all the little winks and the hugs and the kisses and the holding hands. All that stuff is so important till the day you die as a couple.
I've got to ask you a question that I know so many people struggle with because maybe they're empty nesters, maybe they're just in midlife and or earlier, and their marriage isn't turning out to be what they thought it was going to be, and it's kind of dead. And they come to me and they say, is there hope? I mean, is it even possible especially after the longer marriages, is it possible to rekindle that spark again, to actually have a marriage that's deep and connected and intimate? What would you say to that?
There's always hope. And how I know if there's hope or not as a coach, and you don't laugh too hard. My office, my brick and mortar used to be right next to a divorce lawyer's office. And and if
convenient, in case things didn't work.
No, if he felt like the love was still there, he would tell them, well, you go see her first and then we'll talk about divorce. So, and they would. And some of them were just like, nope, this is what road we're going down, but I will tell you that usually I'll know if the first thing I ask them is to tell their love story. And that is the one of the couple tells the love story and no interruption from the other one. And then the other one tells their version of the love story and just watch them. It's absolutely incredible. They've forgotten, but when they tell it to me, all the love shows up in their eyes. Not every single time, but I know when that glint in their eyes shows up and they look at each other and smile, I'm like, there's hope.
Well, have you ever had the opposite happen where they tell their love story because you ask, but there is no glint in the eye?
Yeah, I have.
And then what happens? You send them back next door?
Well, there are questions, I ask them, what they want, are they looking to stay together? Are they looking for a future? And I don't have that next door anymore. It's not in that brick and mortar anymore, but no, I don't ever send anyone to a divorce lawyer. I don't, because it's not my place. I'm a coach.
Got it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But just sort of figuratively speaking.
But I do send them home, and I send them home teaching them some communication skills and teaching them how to make those decisions in without yelling and screaming at each other and without hurling insults at each other. And they come to their own conclusions as to what they want to do with their relationship. Most of the time, they want to stay together. They really do. Most of the time, if they're coming to me, they're looking for
Right.
help and solutions, and they want to stay together. But sometimes one or the other has forced the other half to come into the office, and I won't continue seeing them if it isn't a joint agreement to be there.
Yeah.
So
That makes
yeah,
sense. I mean, it's the whole you can lead a horse to water saying, but you can't force someone to love you, and nor would you really want to. What kind of a relationship would that be?
well, there are a lot of people in those relationships.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
So how do you, what I want people to also hear is that
Mm.
even if they haven't made that decision and they're not an appropriate couple to be with you for whatever
Mhm.
reason, right?
Mhm.
You're still sending them out the door with tools. You're still sending
Absolutely.
them out the door with ways to communicate better and ways to make better decisions, which, no matter
Mm.
what the couple ultimately decides, or one person in the
Mhm.
couple ultimately decides, whether it's to stay married, work on that, or get a divorce, those tools are going to be helpful in either one of those situations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's especially when there are children involved. I will send them out the door with tools to communicate better, and with the thought in mind. This is what they leave with, and that is, you are both parents of these children. You have to learn to communicate together and become friends, friends in the way of raising your children, because you must remember that your children are looking to the two of you for their future partner. That relationship is the picture that they're going to be looking for when they grow up.
Yeah.
And usually they leave going, uh-oh. So they learn.
Yeah. And I think it comes back down to what we were talking about before about beliefs, because beliefs are forged in childhood, many of them anyway, right? So how do you deal with that when you're dealing with a couple? They both were raised in different households, right? So they may have different belief structures. How do you help them bridge that gap between what their belief structures are?
Well, I teach them really strongly how to listen to one another, how to listen with the heart. That is, listening is super tough to do. If you're talking to me and you're saying something to me, and I'm thinking about the next thing that I'm going to say to you, I'm not really listening to you. And so I teach them those listening skills so that they can be open to understanding, this is where I came from, this is what I believe, you know, uh, just the listening part can change couples really, really drastically,
What
and it's a tough skill to acquire.
what do you mean when you say listening with the heart? What does that mean?
Um, so I have couples do an exercise. I have them practice an exercise where when they talk to each other, they each put their hand over each other's hearts, and one speaks and the other one must not speak. They keep their hands over their hearts and the other one must not speak. And it's just basic things at first. That's how I teach them. And I tell them no more than 3 minutes, doing that simple, easy, Um, and my clients tell me that it makes a difference. It really does. And there are other listening tools and skills that I give them to practice listening to each other, and not feeling like they have to jump in and have something to say. And that is a really tough skill to master.
100%. because we all sit, I mean, we're used to every day sitting in meetings or Zoom calls or conversations or whatever. You're always thinking about what your response is going to be. What are you going to say next? Or you're thinking about like, what am I having for dinner tonight? Or like something totally unrelated. And just that gift of presence, of
Mhm.
really listening to someone, can make a huge difference.
Well, it does make a huge difference. I have the particular ability to do that. And I'm not sure where that I've been that way all my life. You talk to me, I'm not thinking about the next thing to say to you. So you end your speaking, and then I respond to you. Um, and I've known all my life that most people are thinking about the next thing they're supposed to say or the next thing they want to say, or, I've just never acquired the ability to do that. It's just blank listening to you. So, and that maybe that's part of being an introvert. I don't know.
But how did you like, where did that come from? Do you have any idea?
I believe that my grandmother uh, taught me those skills. She was the light in my life when I was a kid, and a light in my life when I grew up. I was very blessed that even my children knew her until they were grown ups. So um, she was very, very good at listening. And she had a lot of wisdom to give me, and I listened to her. I'm a learner and an introvert by nature, and I do a lot of listening. When I was a little girl, I barely spoke until I was in about fourth or fifth grade. It wasn't shy. I was just paying attention to what everybody else was saying and doing and listening. So I don't know. I think I was just kind of born this way.
Well, would you think, I mean, that brings up an interesting question. Would you think listening is a skill that can be learned, or it's just something, an ability that you're born with or you're not?
Oh, I most definitely think it's a skill anybody can learn. I really do. Anybody can learn to listen. There's no, it's not that special and different that anybody can't learn to do that. The problem isn't learning to listen. The problem is the willingness to listen. And
Interesting distinction.
yeah, and that I can't promise that anybody can have the willingness to do so. You know, um, I have a friend who said that even when she was a kid, she's in church and they had this prayer circle, and everybody was supposed to say a prayer all around the circle. They're all holding hands, and each one of them was supposed to say a prayer all around there. And she looked at me and she goes, Carrie, as a kid, I don't remember anything that they said, because the entire time that the kids were saying their prayer, all I could do was think about what I was going to say until it got to me. And
Yeah.
then after it got to me, all I could do was worry about, did I say the right thing? So she missed the whole thing. She missed the point of it. And that happens a lot. I'm not saying in church necessarily, but I'm saying in our world it does. We think about the next thing.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying, and I think this is a beautiful way to wrap up and bring this to a close, is that it's not just about deepening your relationships, although that's a beautiful consequence of listening, but it's
Mhm.
about deepening your own experience of life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is. It's amazing to stop and listen. Um, like I said, if you're thinking about the next thing, you're missing so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I have no other way to put it than that. Where can people find you if they want to work with you or learn more about you?
My website, highestintentcoach.com. And if you like, you can sign up when you get there for a free PDF that I have, and it's called 50 Things Couples Can Do for Fun. And you can grab that, and some of it's a little racy, but not terribly racy.
Well, there's nothing wrong with a little racy.
Some of it's a little racy, but it's 50 ideas of how you can bring fun and joy and excitement into your relationship.
Kari, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with the audience, for sharing your story and your nuggets of wisdom. And for those of you out there who are watching, for those of you who are listening, if you like this episode, if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. That will help me keep bringing to you all of the amazing guests that I'm bringing. And thank you again, Kari, for sharing your story. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.